Imagine a castle perched on a lonely hill, its stone walls hiding secrets so dark they'd make your blood run cold. What if I told you a noblewoman, revered by her people, was secretly bathing in the blood of young girls to stay forever young? Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian countess, wasn't just a figure of wealth and power in the late 16th century. She's known as one of history's most infamous killers. Her crimes, shrouded in mystery and horror, have haunted Europe for centuries. How could a woman of such privilege descend into such monstrous acts? Stick with me, because we're diving deep into a story that's equal parts terrifying and fascinating, and by the end, you'll see why her legacy still chills us today. Let's set the scene. It's 1560, and Elizabeth Bathory is born into one of Hungary's most powerful families. The Bathory clan wasn't just rich, they were practically royalty, with ties to kings, cardinals, and warriors who shaped Eastern Europe. Growing up in a sprawling estate, young Elizabeth was surrounded by luxury. Silk gowns, lavish feasts, and servants at her beck and call. But wealth came with a dark side. The Bathory family had a reputation for cruelty. Rumors swirled of relatives, dabbling in the occult, torturing peasants and wielding unchecked power. Some say Elizabeth, as a child, witnessed punishments that would make most of us flinch. Whippings, brandings, even executions. Was this where her twisted path began? Picture a young girl, bright and curious, but exposed to a world where violence was just another tool of control. By age 15, Elizabeth was married off to Ferenc Nadasdy, a warlord known as Hungary's Black Knight. It was a strategic match, uniting two powerful families. They settled in Cachtice castle, a fortress in what's now Slovakia, perched like a vulture over the countryside. Ferenc was often away, fighting the Ottoman Empire, leaving Elizabeth to rule the castle and its lands. To the outside world, she was a model noblewoman, managing estates, raising children, even defending the region during her husband's absences. But behind closed doors, something sinister was brewing. Servants whispered of strange cries echoing through the castle at night. Local girls, hired as maids, started vanishing. What was happening in those cold stone halls? Let's pause for a moment. When you hear serial killer, you might picture a modern figure, someone like Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. But Elizabeth Bathory's story challenges that image. She wasn't a lone predator stalking the streets. She was a countess, surrounded by accomplices, operating within a system that gave her near absolute power. Her wealth and status shielded her, letting her crimes fester for years. It's a chilling reminder that evil doesn't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, behind a noble title and a charming smile. The first whispers of trouble came in the early 1600s. Local priests noticed girls from nearby villages, mostly peasants, some as young as 12, were disappearing after entering Cachtice castle. Parents grew desperate, but who could they turn to? Elizabeth was untouchable, a noblewoman far above the law. Still, rumors spread, tales of torture, of girls drained of blood, of rituals too horrific to repeat. Some said Elizabeth believed bathing in virgin blood would preserve her youth and beauty. Others claimed she was driven by sadistic pleasure, reveling in the pain she inflicted. The truth? It's murky, tangled in centuries of legend and bias. But one thing's clear, something terrible was happening, and it couldn't stay hidden forever. By 1610, the rumors had reached the Hungarian court. King Matthias II, under pressure from the church and nobles, ordered an investigation. This wasn't a simple police raid. It was a political maneuver. The Bathory family's wealth and influence made them a target, and some historians argue the investigation was partly a power grab to seize their lands. Whatever the motives, the king's men, led by Palatine Gheorghe Thurzo, descended on Cachtice Castle in December 1610. What they found shocked even the most hardened investigators. Picture this. Thurzo and his men storm the castle under cover of night. The air is thick with frost, the silence broken only by the crunch of boots on snow. Inside, they find chaos. Servants scatter, trying to hide evidence. In the dungeons, they discover girls, some dead, others barely alive, their bodies marked by unimaginable cruelty. Bloodstains mar the stone floors, instruments of torture, knives, needles, even an iron cage, litter the rooms. Elizabeth herself is caught in the act, or so the story goes, though some accounts say she was calmly dining, oblivious to the raid. The scene was so horrifying that Thurzo, a seasoned noble, reportedly recoiled in disgust. Now let's talk about the numbers. Historical records, admittedly shaky, claim Elizabeth and her accomplices killed anywhere from 30 to 650 girls. The higher figure comes from servant testimony, likely exaggerated under torture. Modern historians lean toward a lower count, perhaps 50-80 victims, still a staggering toll. These weren't random acts of violence. They were systematic, carried out with chilling precision. Elizabeth's inner circle, maids, a dwarf named Fitchko, and a nurse called Ilona Jo, helped lure girls to the castle, promising work or education. Once inside, the victims faced horrors we can barely comprehend: starvation, beatings, mutilation, and worse. The blood-bathing legend, while gripping, is debated. Some say it was a later embellishment, fueled by anti-Bathory propaganda. Others argue it's plausible, given the era's obsession with alchemy and eternal youth. What strikes me most about this story is the betrayal. These girls, often from poor families, trusted Elizabeth. They saw her as a beacon of opportunity, a chance to escape poverty, to serve in a grand castle. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. It's a gut punch, thinking about their hope turning to terror. As an American, I can't help but draw parallels to modern scandals. Powerful people using their status to prey on the vulnerable, all while the system looks the other way. Elizabeth's story feels distant, yet uncomfortably familiar. The investigation moved swiftly. Elizabeth's accomplices were arrested and interrogated, often under brutal conditions. Their confessions, though coerced, painted a grim picture. Rooms filled with bodies, secret rituals, and a countess who seemed untouchable. But here's where things get complicated. Elizabeth herself was never formally tried. Why? Her status. As a noblewoman, she was too powerful to be dragged before a public court. Instead, the authorities struck a deal. Her accomplices faced gruesome executions. Some were burned alive, others beheaded. Elizabeth, however, was sentenced to house arrest. In 1611, she was walled up in a tower of Cachtice castle, with only a small slot for food and air. She lived there, isolated, for 3 years, until her death in 1614 at age 54. Let's reflect on that punishment. On one hand, it's poetic justice. A woman who trapped others now trapped herself. On the other, it's a stark reminder of privilege. A peasant committing similar crimes would have faced the gallows or worse. Elizabeth's wealth and title spared her the full weight of justice, even as her name became synonymous with monstrosity. It's a bitter pill, knowing the system bent for her, just as it often does for the powerful today. Now let's tackle the myths. The blood-bathing story is the most famous, but it's not the only legend. Some tales claim Elizabeth was a vampire, inspired by her pale skin and nocturnal habits. Others say she practiced witchcraft, summoning dark forces in her castle. These stories, while juicy, likely stem from the era's fears: superstition, misogyny, and distrust of powerful women. Hungary in the 1600s was a turbulent place, caught between Catholic and Protestant conflicts, with witch hunts on the rise. A wealthy, widowed noblewoman like Elizabeth was an easy target for scandal. Some historians even argue she was framed, her crimes exaggerated to justify seizing her wealth. While I don't buy the innocent victim theory, too much evidence, points to her guilt. I think the truth lies in a grey area. She was likely a sadist, but the scale of her crimes may have been inflated by political enemies. What's undeniable is her impact. Elizabeth Bathory's story has inspired countless books, movies, and even heavy metal songs. She's often called the female Dracula, a nod to her blood-soaked legacy and Transylvanian roots. For Americans, she's a Gothic icon, blending horror with historical intrigue. Her tale taps into our fascination with the macabre. Think Halloween haunted houses or true crime podcasts. But it's more than just a spooky story. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How does power corrupt? What happens when society turns a blind eye? And why are we so drawn to monsters? Let's zoom out for a moment. The 1600s were a brutal time. Europe was plagued by war, famine, and disease. Torture was a common punishment, and nobles often abused their power over peasants. Elizabeth's crimes, while horrific, weren't entirely unique. Other nobles were known to mistreat servants, sometimes fatally. What sets her apart is the scale and the stories that followed. Her legend grew because it hit a nerve, a mix of fear, fascination, and moral outrage. She became a cautionary tale. Even the elite can fall, and no one is above judgment. As we near the end, let's talk about her final years. Imagine Elizabeth in that tower, sealed away from the world. No more feasts, no more power, just silence and shadows. Some accounts say she repented, praying for forgiveness. Others claim she cursed her enemies until her last breath. We'll never know her true thoughts, but I wonder what went through her mind. Did she feel remorse? Or was she defiant, believing her status justified her actions? Her death in 1614 was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos she'd caused. She was found lifeless on her cell floor, her body frail, her beauty long faded. The castle, once a symbol of her dominance, fell into ruin, as if the land itself rejected her. So what can we take from this? Elizabeth Bathory's story isn't just a historical footnote, it's a mirror. It shows us the dangers of unchecked power, the fragility of trust, and the human capacity for cruelty. It's easy to call her a monster, but that label risks oversimplifying things. She was a product of her time, her upbringing, and her privilege, yet she made choices that led to unimaginable suffering. Her tale reminds us to question authority, to listen to the voiceless, and to hold the powerful accountable, no matter their status. Before we wrap up, let's think about those girls, the victims whose names are mostly lost to history. They weren't just numbers in a grim tally. They were daughters, sisters, dreamers. Their lives mattered, and their stories deserve to be remembered, not overshadowed by the infamy of their killer. If this story moves you, take a moment to reflect on how we can honor the forgotten by seeking justice and compassion in our own time. Now, here's where you come in. What do you think drove Elizabeth Bathory? Was it madness, cruelty, or something deeper? Drop a comment below and let's start a conversation. If this story gripped you, hit that like button and share it with a friend who loves a good historical mystery. And don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. For more tales of history's darkest figures, check out our next video. Napoleon's exile ended in pure misery. It's another wild ride you won't believe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.